Welcome to the Fun Astrology and Merriman Market Analyst Saturday Financial Podcast. I'm Thomas Miller. Thanks for joining us. This is the free weekly newsletter that we do every week here from MMAcycles.com, generally written by Ray Merriman and penned by him this week. What another week in the markets it was. This is, of course, written for the week coming of October 20th, but before we look forward, let's take a look and review. The first article was written in last year's Forecast 2025 book that was written in November of 2024. This was the Silver Market in 2025 section written by Pujan Zalfagarnia. He said, quote, "The technical and fundamental picture remains strong for silver, which could even record a new all-time high at $53.06, plus or minus $5.27, within 3 months of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction on February 20th, 2026, before a sharp sell-off." End quote. Now Ray's comments. Okay, so Pujan may have been 1 month off, as silver soared to a new all-time high of $53.76 on the evening of October 16th, which was within the allowable 3-day orb of our October 14th Geocosmic critical reversal date. But when you consider that Saturn and Neptune came within 13 minutes of an exact conjunction in July of 2025, and the actual high of October 16th was right near the middle of those two conjunctions, the mid-July through the mid-February, you have to appreciate what Pujan was looking at. And then the price target being so close to the middle of the price range he provided at a time when silver was trading around $30 an ounce is equally remarkable. That's why he is a valued MMA market analyst. It's too early to tell if that new all-time high in silver will hold or not, but we do note that 1, it is late in silver's 26.5-month cycle, as covered in the monthly MMA Cycles report that was issued this past week. And 2, that this high is happening in the time band associated with a crest with Mars in the latter half of the sign of Scorpio. As of Friday, October 17th, Mars was posited at 17 degrees Scorpio. According to the most recent studies on gold by Wyatt Fellows, another remarkably accurate MMA analyst and researcher, that was presented in our September 14th webinar on metals and Bitcoin, gold most often peaks when Mars is between 15 and 29 degrees Scorpio. Our call in that webinar was to watch closely for a high in both metals within 3 trading days of October 14th. Not bad. On Friday, silver topped out at $53.76 and then fell to $49.66, which is a huge drop in one day, and gold peaked at $43.92 on the evening of October 16th, and then dropped nearly $200, below $4,200, which may be its biggest one-day decline ever. The metals were the big story last week, but other financial markets were also active as heliocentric Mercury ended its 2-week trek through the wild sign of Sagittarius. Bitcoin, for instance, continued to fall after posting its all-time high of $126,223 on October 6th, also within the time band of our call for its all-time high, given in that same September 14th webinar. By Friday, October 17th, Bitcoin was down to $103,659. That was its lowest price since June 23rd. Another big story was crude oil, which plunged to $56.15 on Friday, October 17th, its lowest mark since the COVID-19 pandemic lows of April 2020. This fits as Saturn, of loss, retrogrades back through Pisces, the sign related to crude oil. It also fits the White House agenda to bring Putin to the negotiating table by creating economic pain to Russia via extremely low oil prices. Crude oil is Russia's greatest exporting revenue generator, supporting its ongoing campaign to grab as much of Ukraine's land as possible. It's also happening at a time when Russia's government is due to implode according to its correlation to the 36-year Saturn-Neptune cycle, plus or minus 1 year. In global equity markets, it was a tense week, probably related to the dysfunction of the U.S. government that has led to yet another unnecessary and unwelcomed shutdown. The U.S. stock market tried to recover from last Friday's tariff tantrum that marked a huge intraday price range, but the entire week of trading this week remained within that one-day price range of last Friday, October 10th. In Asia and the Pacific Rim, Australia's ASX and India's Nifty stood out as each made new all-time highs late last week. China's SSE index tested its multi-year high on Thursday before pulling back. But Hong Kong's Hang Seng was not so fortunate as it fell to a new 6-week low. Japan's Nikkei was subdued following its all-time high of the prior week, but did not pull back much in any event. Europe's stock indices were more depressed following their all-time highs from October 6th through 9th. Zurich SMI was the only star performer, rallying to its highest level since March. This is interesting because the SMI was the only index not to make a new all-time high October 6th through 9th. So maybe it's playing catch-up now. Now we turn the page with the short-term geocosmics looking at the sky for the week ahead. A couple of articles to set the stage, first from the Wall Street Journal on October 15th on Wednesday. In its trade standoff with Washington, Beijing thinks it has found America's Achilles heel, President Trump's fixation on the stock market. China is holding a firm line because of its conviction that an escalating trade war will tank markets, as it did in April after Trump announced his Liberation Day tariffs, prompting Beijing to hit back. China expects that the prospect of another market meltdown ultimately will force Trump to negotiate at an expected summit with Xi later this month, the People said. End quote. And here's another from the Journal's editorial board, also from Wednesday. Mr. Trump backed Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu to the hilt. He made Hamas understand that failing to negotiate would weaken its position. He understood that success on the battlefield is a prerequisite to lasting peace. In other words, the president exerted maximum pressure on adversaries, and it worked. The mystery is why he has for so long refused to show the same strength toward Mr. Putin. The president's strategy of unilateral concessions, listening sympathetically to the Russian dictator's catalog of imperialist grievances, has not worked. End quote. Now, Ray's look ahead. Last week was a worldwide celebration over the commencement of the Gaza peace plan, spearheaded by none other than U.S. President Donald Trump. Interesting that his chaotic and unpredictable negotiating style worked so well with Hamas to bring a vision of peace to the war-torn Middle East, but the same strategy has not been applied to Russia in its violation of international laws and its quest to grab land in Ukraine. Yes, I know the other side of the argument, but it does not justify the killing of civilians and kidnapping children who are not part of the warrior class. Nevertheless, the investment community will wonder when the quote-unquote peace dividend will kick in, which might require two further developments. One, to end the trade war and tariff tantrums that disrupt world trade, and two, to end the Russia-Ukraine war that is close to drawing in NATO and even the United States. In this regard, we return to our outlook regarding the Aries Vortex of 2025 and 2026. In this writer's view, Ray Merriman, the Aries Vortex of 2025 and 26 will be the bottom of the abyss pertaining to polarization, division, coercion, and propaganda, where truth has been compromised in order to provide a political narrative to harm one's enemies. However, as will be seen in the Forecast 2026 book, Saturn will begin to separate from Neptune at the 0 degrees Aries point in March, where it also draws power from its double sextile to Uranus and Pluto. Neptune, the planet ruling peace, however, will remain at the midpoint and in double sextile to Uranus and Pluto after that and into 2028. That means Neptune, not Saturn, will garner the benefits from Uranus and Pluto. Neptune in Aries is an entirely different theme than Saturn in Aries. In astrology, the planets symbolize the power to act, and the sign it is in represents attitude, which can modify or influence actions. So Neptune, the messenger of peace, comes into the home of Aries, the warrior, and says, I want you to stop your aggression and channel it toward making peace. Uranus, the planet of inspiration, and Pluto, the planet of transformation and rebuilding, lend their powers now to Neptune more than Saturn. If we look into the past, when Saturn and Neptune conjoined, we will see conflicts abound, but they were settled and followed by at least 10 years of world peace. No one thought this possible heading into 2025, especially under the leadership of Donald Trump, whose behavior has mostly been seen as polarizing, more than unifying, to everyone outside of MAGA. But the universe works in mysterious ways, and it is perhaps surprising, but now understandable, why he was elected president to lead us through this Aries Vortex. Love him or hate him, he was the key to initiating the process of peace in the Middle East. But the question remains, where is the peace dividend? It's coming, according to my understanding of the Aries Vortex. Shorter term, next week will be a new moon in the last degree of Libra, which means the degree of indecision, 29, is trying to do something with the sign of indecision, but it's not sure what to do. So it is best to let the sun get a couple of days into Scorpio, a sign that makes decisions, even though at times ill-advised decisions that involve too much leverage and not enough liquidity. This may indicate a slew of margin calls, forcing people to pay up or sell positions to raise cash. And if that's so, it could lead to a further sell-off in those markets affected, such as precious metals. Next week's aspects are rather benign otherwise, suggesting support to stock markets, with Mercury trine both Jupiter and Saturn at the end of the week, followed by Mars doing the same the week after. The stock market usually likes favorable Jupiter transits. Gold and silver, not so much, although Mars is still in Scorpio through November 4th, which gold also likes. But still, gold is due for an important crest any time, with Mars between 15 and 29 degrees Scorpio, and we are there. And that is this week's newsletter. Has me think of the old, now I understand it's British, but some people think Chinese. Anyway, the old proverb, may we live in interesting times. And they are interesting times around MMA. I have just finished the Evolutionary Astrology audiobook, and it will be out soon enough. It's going to be probably in November, December time frame. And boy, did it turn out great. And I can't wait to share it with you on the Fun Astrology podcast. Ray is still feverishly working through Forecast 2026, and of course it will be out. You have until the 31st, another couple of weeks, to order at the cheapest price of the year. You can do that at MMAcycles.com. So a lot going on around here, obviously, and that Forecast 2026 book, in addition to being the 50th anniversary, is going to be our light and our path through next year for sure, as you just heard in this episode. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for your time. We'll see you back on the Fun Astrology podcast all week next week.